A man who committed suicide more than 100 years ago left behind a puzzling clue that to this day has never been solved. And then we take a look at the story of a family in crisis. When the father comes down with a deadly disease, everyone is sad. But is it possible that the true sorrow will begin after he dies? You're like, obviously, but no, you don't get happier when they die. But what I'm saying is, it gets spooky. It turns into a spooky story today on Dead Rabbit Radio. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Dead Rabbit Radio. I'm your host, Jason Carpenter. I'm having a great day. Hope you guys are having a great day too. Hope you guys have some awesome plans for the weekend. I'm going to go see that 28 Years Later movie, The Bone Temple. I really like 28 Years Later. I didn't like the first two. I didn't like 28 Days Later. I really didn't like that movie. I thought that movie was kind of stinky. And 28 Weeks Later downright sucked. But 28 Years Later I really enjoyed. I'm going to go check out the sequel. Really looking forward to that. Probably do some other stuff. Mostly watch movies, play Battlefield 6. So that's what I like to do. And I hope you guys have some awesome stuff planned as well. We got a lot of stuff to cover today. So first off, running into Dead Rabbit Radio Command. Everyone get on your feet and give it up for the terrific trio of Art, Maria, and Artorias. Woohoo! Yeah, yeah, running on in to Dead Rabbit Radio Command. If you can't tell, I'm clapping a little bit less. It's not because I like them less. I really like those guys. This is one of those episodes I'm recording before I go to work. So I'm recording this at 6 in the morning. I'm trying not to wake anybody up. They made a donation during our Dead Rabbit Radio live stream back for our Thanksgiving live stream. They also are regular attendees of the Dead Rabbit Radio movie night, and they were often seen at the Dead Rabbit Radio live shows as well. Longtime supporters of the show. They also support the Patreon. Longtime supporters of the show. That is why they are going to be our captain, our pilots this episode. If you guys can't support the show financially, it's totally fine. Just help spread the word about Dead Rabbit Radio. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell everyone you know. Dead Rabbit Radio is your favorite paranormal show. That is how you can help the show grow. Before we get officially started, 2 announcements. Speaking of movie nights, we are going to have a January movie night. So that's going to be January 30th at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. That is a Friday movie night. We watch a bunch of short horror films, so you can pop in and out as the evening goes on. It's always a lot of fun. Those are for Patreon members only, the Friday movie night. But then the next day, Saturday the 31st, at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, we have a movie night available for everybody. So if you're not a Patreon member, you can still join us for the Saturday morning one. That's for our international listeners and people who aren't members of the Patreon. So Friday, January 30th, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time is our Dead Rabbit Radio movie night, and January 31st, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's going to be our Dead Rabbit Radio movie morning, and I hope to see you guys there. It's always a lot of fun. Also, one last announcement. I will be, once again, speaking at the Oregon Ghost Conference this year. It's going to be from March 27th to the 29th in Seaside, Oregon. I'm going to give a presentation on haunted underwear. Haunted clothing. So yeah, I think it'll be a good one. We've covered a lot of stuff like that, so I'm really looking forward to doing that one. So I hope to see you guys there. You guys should check it out. And even if you guys can't come out to see me, come swing by the Seaside Convention Center, check out the Oregon Ghost Conference. And if you guys can't come out here at all, support ghost conferences, paranormal conferences in your area, and help that community grow where you're at as well. Okay. Let's go ahead and get started. Art, Maria, and Artorias. I'm going to go ahead and toss you guys the bunny bicycle. Everyone climb on board as the trio of terror pedal us out of Dead Rabbit Radio. Why are we terrible now? I didn't say terrible, I said terror. Spooky. They're pedaling us out of Dead Rabbit Radio Command all the way out to Budapest. Inca, Inca, Inca. Inca, Inca, Inca. Inca, Inca, Inca. All the way out to Budapest. Now, I gotta apologize for, it's a family. It's a mother, a father, and a son, Art, Maria, and Artorias. These are really depressing stories. It's like I try to figure out a good Patreon match or a good show supporter match for the stories, but I gotta admit, this stuff's kind of depressing. It's mysterious, right? That allows it to be as crippling, depressive as possible. But it's pretty dark. But this one doesn't start off dark. It ends dark, but it doesn't start off dark. It actually starts on a sunny, sunny day in the year 1924. And actually, before I get started, tip of the hat to Sustained Disgust. I got this off of his Obscure Unsolved Mysteries iceberg. And, because I still go through that. He posted this a long time ago, and there's just so much stuff on it. I'm still kind of going through it and finding stuff. This is a fascinating story. So thank you so much for posting that and for doing the research and everything, Sustained Disgust. The year's 1924. This is actually before we get to Budapest. So family crawled back onto the bike and ride us out of Budapest all the way out to Columbia University. We're about to meet this guy named Richard L. Simon, and he's sitting at his Aunt Wixie's house. He's just kind of sitting there, and Aunt Wixie's walking around. She's like, "Oh me, oh my, won't you believe this? Look at all of this fun I'm having." And Richard goes, "Oh, what's going on, Aunt?" And she goes, "Well, look at the crazy things people are doing today." And she holds up a piece of paper, and it's a crossword puzzle. This is new. This was like a new thing back then. "Oh me, oh my, I just have so much fun. What's a 5-letter word for enjoyment?" Richard's like, "I don't know." "Oh, okay. Hey, nephew in the other room, do you know a 5-letter word?" Wanders off. Well, Richard's sitting there and he goes, fascinating stuff. Girl, what is a 5-letter word for enjoyment? I don't know. That just popped in my head. Don't rack your brain too hard about it. But Richard did rack his brain because he's sitting there, Richard L. Simon sitting there, and his aunt loves crossword puzzles. But the problem is, they'd just been invented back in 1913, so it's still really new. It's still a novelty. You only got them in newspapers, and newspaper editors hated making crossword puzzles because they are very difficult to make. And they didn't have all these computer programs we have nowadays. You got to sit down and figure this stuff out yourself, and which is hard enough. I love crossword puzzles. But imagine trying to build them regularly for your newspaper. So, and what happened was most newspaper editors, they would try it here and there, and they'd go, "This is way too difficult. We're spending way too much time. There's all these unsolved murders and police corruption in our town. They're the ones doing the murders. We should be investigating this instead of trying to figure out this crossword puzzle." So, at this point in 1924, there was only one newspaper that ran crossword puzzles, at least in America. And it was The World. There's a newspaper called The World. And when Richard Simon's sitting there, he's a college student. When Richard Simon's sitting there as a young man and his aunt is talking about crossword puzzles, she's like, "I would do crossword puzzles all the time if I could. I love them. But, I have to wait till the newspaper shows up and I do one a day." And he goes, "You know what? Actually, they are pretty popular. People don't like making them." And he thinks, I bet you anything, if we sold a book of crossword puzzles, it would be pretty successful. And Aunt Wixie's like, "Oh, you're giving me the jitters. You're giving me the jitters, nephew. Oh." She's so excited. These aren't exact quotes, by the way. He did not accidentally give his aunt an orgasm by talking about crossword puzzles. That's not in the Wikipedia history, at least. No, he goes, "Dude, I bet you anything we can make a book of crossword puzzles that would sell really well." So he calls up, I don't know if he called him up in 1924. He sent a telegram to a college buddy named M. Lincoln Schuster. And he goes, "Yo, M, we gotta, figure this out. I bet you this is an easy way to make a lot of money." So they did. They pooled whatever funds they had together. They created the very first book of crossword puzzles. Within the first year, it sold 300,000 copies. So they started a company, Simon and Schuster, which is, you're like, oh, those guys, yes. At this time, today, they're the second largest book publisher on planet Earth. Simon and Schuster, Richard L. Simon and M. Lincoln Schuster started off making these crossword puzzles, right? That's not depressing, right? That's actually a sign of ingenuity and go-getism, right? The promise of capitalism, this idea that you can take an idea all the way to the stars. That's not depressing, right? That's pretty uplifting. Well, now let's travel to 1926 Budapest. And we're going to meet a man named Julius Anthony 25 years old. 1926, Budapest, he walks into the Cafe MK. It's a little... It's not like we call cafes over here. It's like a coffee shop. Over there, they're selling wine. You get wine. You get a bottle of wine at their cafes. So I think it's something different. It means something different there, like a restaurant. But anyways, this homeboy walks into the cafe wearing a fur coat. He sits down and he goes, I'd like one bottle of wine. Well, I don't know if he actually ordered the whole bottle. They're like, oh, okay, he's going to be one of those customers. He orders some wine and he goes, and pardon me, maitre d', or waitress, whatever we call you in Budapest. I'd like one sheet of paper as well. Oh, and before you get too far away, please, do you happen to have a ruler? And they're like, yeah, probably somewhere around here. I don't know of any restaurant that has a ruler, but I'm sure you can find something. Here's a banana. This banana's 12 inches long. Here you go. Well, anyways, young Julius is sitting at this table here in this fur coat, drinking wine, and he begins to sketch out a crossword puzzle on this piece of paper he was given. He's sitting there, he's drinking wine, then he orders a coffee. That sounds disgusting. That sounds super gross, just the two tastes together. But I don't know. Listen, this guy, I mean, I don't mean to laugh, but he's kind of going balls to the wall at this point, because what does he have left to lose? Jason, that's not really balls to the wall. Drinking wine and then coffee. Why is that blowing your mind? It sounds disgusting to me. I don't like wine anyways. I think it's really gross. And, coffee's decent, but I definitely wouldn't combine the two. If I saw someone doing that, I go, that's a madman. That's a madman with nothing to live for. He's sitting there, he's drinking wine, he orders a coffee. He keeps making this face, ugh, every time he takes a sip, ugh. But he's drinking his coffee, he's sitting there, he's continuing to do this crossword puzzle. He gets up, walks over to make a phone call. There's like a phone on the wall type of deal there. Maybe he's behind the counter, I don't know. Gets up to make a phone call. But whoever he's trying to call, they don't get connected through. And he goes back to his table and he's sitting there and he's continuing to work on this crossword puzzle. He's there for around an hour. Now, this is an active cafe. There's a lot of stuff going on. There's people working there. There's other people enjoying their coffee and wine combination. People come, people go. He's sitting there for an hour doing this crossword puzzle, making a crossword puzzle. And then all of a sudden, a gunshot is heard in the cafe, and people look around, they're like, what? Where'd that come from? You look around the body of the cafe, like the main dining room, everybody looks fine. Well, they clearly all heard the gunshot. The cloak attendant, the person working the cloakroom, everyone's kind of trying to figure out where this gunshot came from, but she walks into the bathroom. She goes in to check the bathrooms, and that is when she hears the sound of a second gunshot. She sees Julius Anthony, 25 years old, laying on the floor of the bathroom, his hand still holding onto the pistol that he used to shoot himself once in the head and once in the chest. This was reported in a Hungarian newspaper called, I forgot Budapest is in Hungary. Should have said we were in Hungary instead of Budapest. This was published in a Hungarian newspaper called As Est. Which kind of sounds like as if, right? That's their newspaper. They're like, hey, the mayor has been caught sleeping with the ombudsman. As if. But, the guy just shot himself twice in a bathroom. Why are you cracking jokes? As Est, this newspaper, the March 4th, 1926 edition, published this story. And we have all this information. You have all these witnesses that saw him come in and saw him try to make a phone call. It doesn't go through. Saw him making the crossword puzzle. And, the newspaper delved a little bit into who was Julius? Who was this guy? And they found out he actually wasn't doing too great. They said people had reported him as being kind of miserable. Not like miserly, not like Scrooge or anything like that. He was just having a really rough go of it. He was unemployed and he was recently evicted because he couldn't pay his rent. That's almost as bad as you can get. That's about as bad as most people can get outside of some sort of drug addiction or some sort of horrible, the mob's after you type of thing. That seems to be like, you don't have a job and you're homeless. That's like kind of a base level of bad, or as bad as it can get. Well, anyways, he shoots himself. Sad story, right? At this point in time, Hungary, and Budapest specifically, had a rash of suicides. A lot of people were killing themselves because everything just felt like there was, what's the point of going on? Everything is bad and it's only going to get worse. And what we see with suicides, most people don't leave suicide notes. That's kind of a convention of the media. Some people do, but actually most suicide victims don't leave notes. Some do. This dude did. Or a better way to put it would be half a note. Because he left this message, he killed himself in the cafe, so of course they're wondering what he was working on. They found this message and it said, quote, "The solution will give you the exact reasons for my suicide, and also the names of the people interested," unquote. And that is what he labeled the crossword puzzle. And the police are like, wait, what? They're looking at this homemade crossword puzzle, and they go, okay, so if we solve the puzzle, we'll know why he killed himself, and who else may be involved, or who else may need to know about this. I guess we should try to solve this crossword puzzle. The news article read, quote, "The mysterious crossword puzzle was taken to the police headquarters, where the Suicide Protection Department," think about that, they were having so many suicides at this point in time in Budapest, you had a group of cops assigned to them. I don't think they do that at all anymore. I would hope not. I mean, that's a depressing amount of suicides. Any amount of suicides is sad. But imagine having so many. The police chief comes in and goes, "Okay, guys, I need 4 or 5 of you to volunteer for the suicide department." And they're like, what? Yeah, you're just going to investigate suicide? I mean, to be fair, they're pretty easy to solve, guys. But you shouldn't joke about it. But there's going to be so many suicides, you guys are going to have to, investigate them. Yeah, I'll do that. Sounds like a pretty easy job. It probably would be an easy job. Cause of death? Suicide. Who killed him? He did. This guy did it. But think about how depressing that would be. Just over and over and over again. What's more depressing, murder or suicide? I don't know. I don't personally know which one's more depressing. You're like, Jason, you always try to say what's worse or what's more. They're both equally bad. I don't know. I honestly think suicide's more depressing. Just by a smidgen. Nick Reiner kills his mom and his dad. That's horrible. But imagine, you're like, don't finish this sentence, Jason. Don't finish it. Wouldn't it have been worse if they killed themselves? They left Conan O'Brien's party and then they took their own lives. You'd be like, they were having so much fun there. Everyone stands around and wonders, what could we have done differently? Why did they go home and kill themselves? It's terrible. I mean, we do ask, well, they seem to be having a good time and then their son murdered them, but there's something worse about it. Or not worse, but sadder. I think. But by a smidgen. Anyways, does there have to be a difference? Not everything has to be a compare and contrast essay. The Suicide Protection Department. The mysterious crossword puzzle was taken to the police headquarters, where the Suicide Protection Department worked on solving the crossword puzzle all morning today. However, the crossword puzzle has not been solved. Therefore, the police headquarters will give the crossword puzzle found on the marbled table of the Emke Cafe to an experienced solver. Unquote. So they did give it to someone who knew a lot about crossword puzzles in the area. And the guy came back, he goes, I don't know what the answers are. I can't figure this out. So the police then opened it up to the public. They said, anyone who can help us solve this crossword puzzle, you're welcome to come on down to the police station and take a look at it. They actually made an open plea. No one could figure it out. To this day, it remains unsolved. And what's interesting is I say today remains unsolved, but for a long time, this was considered a urban legend. people would talk about it in Hungary. They'd go, hey, did you ever hear that story about the guy who killed himself and left the crossword puzzle nobody could solve? That wasn't his intent. He wanted people to solve it, but no one could ever find any source of it. No one could ever find any proof, and it sounded like an urban legend. It just sounded like some weird, creepy incident that happened so long ago that you weren't able to really find anything about it. Well, what happened was there is a website called cyphermysteries.com, and they cover puzzle mysteries. And they were looking into it, and they found a Hungarian urban legend website that also had been looking into it and was able to find out that, yes, the story's true, 100%. They were finally able to find a copy of the newspaper, a copy of that article explaining it. Before, fairly recently, within the past couple of years, this was considered an urban legend for almost 100 years at this point, because no one could remember any of the real details about it. But it turns out that it's true, and it turns out to this day, the puzzle's never been solved. And the question is, does the puzzle still even, we know it's real, but is it still real? Because we're talking about a piece of paper from 1926 that was scribbled out on a cafe table, a marble cafe table, a fancy place. It is police evidence, so it probably was taken care of more than, say, a note you left for a loved one saying, hey, I'll be back, I'm going to go buy some milk or something like that. Or even a school paper you wrote in high school. It might be moldering somewhere in a file cabinet. It was police evidence, so they may have tried to preserve it more than a normal piece of paper, but we're still talking about Hungarian police in 1926. Quite a turbulent future ahead for that country. Right? World War II, Soviet Union collapses. Like, there's a lot of things that could cause a police department to be destroyed or not taken care of, or just paper being lost. So now that people have proven that the website is real, now that people have proven that the crossword puzzle is real, some people are trying to find an actual copy of it. Can they actually see? Now, it is in Hungarian, so you know that would be a skill you would need before you tried handling this one. But still fascinating nonetheless. There is the idea, and this was kind of put forth in the older news article about it. There is the idea, and I don't remember if the original news article talked about this or the Hungarian Urban Legends website talked about this. I don't remember exactly where I got this piece of information. But it might have been the Cypher Mystery website as well. All of these links are in the show notes. There's the idea that the crossword puzzle may have been unsolvable on purpose. And Julius wanted to go out, no pun intended, but with a bang. He wanted to leave behind a mystery, much like Forrest Finn. I think Forrest Finn would have much preferred that he died before his treasure was found, and then he could just assume no one ever found it. That's your legacy. You leave behind this mystery. And the reason why that theory's out there is there were so many suicides in the city at that point and in the country at that point that it allowed his suicide to kind of stand out. That's definitely possible. It's definitely possible. But it's just as possible, if not more possible, that there is an answer to it. And either he didn't do it right, made it unsolvable, you know, like the letters and the words wouldn't line up, or that the clues themselves were so specific to maybe only people in his life would know the answers to some of these questions, right? A crossword puzzle. What's a 8-letter word for space show moving? I'm like, what? 8-letter word for space show moving? Well, Star Trek. Don't ever make a I should make a Dead Rabbit Radio crossword puzzle. That'd be dope. But you know, it could be stuff like that. That's a poorly that's not a good clue, is what I'm saying. There's a much better way to say Star Trek without what was it, space show moving or something? Like, I guess. Don't make crossword puzzle. It could have been a poorly constructed crossword puzzle that was meant to be solved but can't. It could be a crossword puzzle that had very specific questions that you were trying to answer that you would only know if you had specific information about Julius himself. And the police didn't have that. And locals who knew him didn't want to get involved. Because if this was listing out people who were quote-unquote interested, it could have been names of loved ones. It could have also been people that didn't want to be revealed or linked to him in some way. Or it could have just been an unsolvable crossword puzzle. Something that he could leave behind as a legacy. Something that he could be remembered by. Which in the end has worked, right? It took 100 years. People forgot all the details about this story, but now we know his name, Julius Anthony, did leave a legacy. It's a sad one. I mean, obviously, I'm not saying that's a good idea, because what are the chances of that happening? There's probably a lot of people who left similarly puzzling clues before they died, and they're like, if you can solve my suicide, you'll find 18 gold coins underneath ... And then there's like a Rubik's Cube. He puts a Rubik's Cube on top of it. You have 1 minute to solve this. Otherwise, the coins will be devoured by a leprechaun. Leave behind a legacy. It's very, and that adds a different level of tragedy to it, right? Because people kill themselves for all sorts of reasons. But like 90% of people who kill themselves, they were thinking about it and attempting it since childhood. The idea of someone on hard times killing themselves, that's actually not the vast majority of suicides. That's what I always thought. We've done multiple episodes on suicides on this show. I know, it's super depressing. Sorry, family. Sorry, Art Maria and Artorias. Artorias is like, oh, is the second story going to be happy? Is the second story going to be nice? But yeah, crazy. And I think it's always interesting, right? Urban legends that turn out to be true. Because it does sound fake. An unsolvable crossword puzzle, a guy shoots himself twice in a cafe bathroom. Like, all of this stuff, it sounds too good to be true. Well, it's a horrible story, but you know what I mean? Like, as far as a mystery goes, it's too good to be true, and people just thought it was fake, and it's real. And it was a real story. It's a real-life tragedy and a real-life puzzle, and it may still be out there. Somewhere in a police evidence locker. Someone may have made a copy of it at some point. Police officer took it home. There may still be copies of this out there. And the question is, can it be solved today? Or was it truly an unsolvable puzzle left behind by a man who was moments away from killing himself? Sorry, family. I know. Pretty rough stuff, but interesting nonetheless. Art, Maria, and Artorias, let's go ahead and toss you guys 3 sets of keys to the world-famous Carpenter Copter. Everyone climb on board as they fly us out of Hungary, all the way out to a house in Anywhere, USA. We're flying all the way out to Anywhere, USA. We don't know exactly where this story took place, but just to set it up, Artorias, you may want to skip this one. You might have wanted to honestly probably skip the first one. You're like, yeah, my kid he's not really big on listening to stories about suicide. Yeah, sorry about that. But this story involves a mother, a father, and a kid. So it's a little, basically it's exactly like your household. It's funny, I say all this stuff. Art and Maria have sent me over a pretty compelling ghost story of their own. I need to cover that one of these days. We've been talking about it for months, honestly, back and forth. But, and Art is also one of my Battlefield 6 veterans as well. We play a lot. Got to give him the shout out for that. So, but basically I'm just buying myself time before I start this story because it's a sad one. But let's go ahead and get started. We're hanging out at this house and we're about to meet a family. We're going to have the son, we'll call him George, and his dad, we'll call him Rick, and the mom, we'll call her Betty. And George grows up in a household where his dad is a man's man. He's physically strong. He's a big guy. And we're not talking about weight, we're talking about muscles. He's a big, strong man. And George always saw him as that, as someone who just was physically capable of doing whatever he wanted at any given point in time. He's not a superhero, but you know what I mean? Like, he's a strong dude. And if you had to say one word to sum up Rick, you'd say he's strong. He's physically strong. Takes care of himself. He was a man who liked working with his hands. And growing up in this household, George watched his dad often go into the workshop. They have a detached workshop at this house, and Dad would go in there and he'd do all sorts of projects that allowed him to use his hands. So let's say Betty goes, I need a new kitchen chair. Right on it, honey. And he'd go in there and start like cutting wood and stuff like that. And then eventually, 6 months later, come out with a chair. I don't know how long it takes to make a chair by hand. I'm sure it takes a while, right? A good chair, at least. He's all sanding it. Oh, well, thanks, honey. This is the best chair ever. My pleasure. Hey, Dad, can you fix my bike? Sure, son. He fixes the bike, right? That takes only a couple minutes. It's like, son, the seat was on backwards. That's all. They didn't really fix anything. He's a strong man. He's a physically strong man. He's a man who likes to work with his hands. He's fit. But as he gets older, around the age of 63, hey, Dad, you okay? He can't get rid of it. He goes to the doctor. The doctor goes, oh, it's not a big deal. This is part of the aging process. You're going to get sicker more often. And the way your body, how fast it's able to recover from these types of illnesses, it's just going to take longer to deal with. Everyone gets older, even the strongest of us. At this point, too, he's recently retired. Rick. And that was another thing. Doctor goes, you used to be doing more just by getting up, going to work, and doing whatever you do for work and coming home. All of that stuff is gone now. Your body's slowing down. It's going to take longer to recover from this stuff. But Rick isn't an idle hands man. He spends so much time in his workshop. George says he's had to have spent hundreds of hours in that workshop. I can almost guarantee that's a underestimate. I've spent like 400 hours in Battlefield 6. And that game came out in October, so I'm sure Dad probably spent closer to 1,000 hours in this workshop over the years. But anyway, so doctor's like, you're just going to have to deal with the cough, stay busy as much as you can, but at the same time, it's going to take a while. You're older. You don't recover as quick. At this point, George has moved out. George has struck out on his own. He still stays in contact with the family. He's still nearby, doing the college thing, or maybe even post-college. Maybe he's doing the job thing. Well, a year after his dad develops his cough, one day, George gets a phone call from his mother. Hello, George. Hello, Georgie boy. Hey, Mom, what's up? Is everything okay? No, it's not. Your father, he's collapsed. Oh, boo-hoo-hoo. He's so sick. Come quick, son. And he does. He shows up. His dad's in the hospital. His mom is sitting there all crying and stuff in the hospital. And the doctor is talking to them. And he goes, hey, I hate to break it to you, Rick, but remember, I don't know if it's the same doctor. It probably wasn't. Talk about egg on my face. I'm sure it was a different doctor, but now that Rick is in the hospital after he collapsed, the hospital doctor says, hey, I don't know if you know this, but you have cancer. What? Yes, and not only do you have cancer, you've had cancer. And I'm like, what? Wait, what's the difference? Well, the difference is that it's not like you have cancer now. You do, by the way, but you had it for a long time. It's not like you just got cancer this afternoon. That's why I used had as in past tense, the doctor explains. And they're like, am I dying or not? He's like, unfortunately you are. But here's the thing. If you had come in earlier, maybe we would have been able to treat it. So Rick has cancer of the esophagus, stage 4. And it's spread to the rest of his body. His spine has it, his stomach has it, it's in his lungs. And the hospital doctor goes, yeah, if we'd caught this earlier, might have been able to do something about it. So it's a pretty quick descent. Artorias is like crying. He's like, oh, Daddy, please, no. Make the episode stop. I don't want to think about you guys dying. But yeah, it's depressing, obviously, but this story's not over yet, and trust me, it gets worse. George is watching his father not even slowly, George is watching his father fastly waste away. He went from being the strongest person I knew, really over the course of a year, to being this bedridden bum. He didn't use that word. Oh, get up, come on. Cancer can't be that bad. Make me a chair. He goes, my dad was like just a doped up dude. Laying there in the hospital bed. He was in such pain. They just were keeping him pumped full of morphine, and he's just kind of laying there. This man who once was the strongest guy I knew was now, And because the cancer had got to his spine, whether or not he was high on morphine, he could no longer walk. So even if he wasn't on morphine, it's not like hey, Dad, how about one more game of catch? Me and you in the backyard of this hospital. Rick wouldn't be able to jump up and go, let's do it, son. Because he can't walk anymore. I mean, you could play catch, put him in a wheelchair, but here's the thing. He's also doped to the gills with morphine. You wouldn't want to do that. You're all nurse. Can we give him less painkillers today? I want to play catch with him. They're like, he has stage 4 cancer of the esophagus. No, he's not playing catch. He's in a lot of pain, son. So, Dad is slowly dying. From the time that he's put into the hospital to 23 days later, it's just been a very, very rapid descent of his health and of his physical fitness, and the cancer's growing. George said, within 23 days, Dad was dead. And the last time I saw him, this man who I always looked up to as being the model of manly physical fitness was wearing a diaper. He was doped out of his mind on morphine. He died later that night. Tragic story. Not done, but sad. Tragic story. Well, time marches on like it does for all of us, and George and his mom Betty, have to keep on going. Betty continues to live in the house that she used to share with her husband. George doesn't live at home, but he swings by quite often. And you really would want to help take care of your mom, make sure everything's going good. He does swing by pretty often. But then the mom started to say this thing, started to tell George this thing, and he didn't really know how to put it. He didn't really know how to take it. She'd be like, Georgie boy, your father's workshop out there. No one's really done anything in there since Dad died. George is like, yeah, it's a silent testament to the man he once was. Yeah, well, silent might not be the best word. George is like, what? And she's like, yeah, sometimes I don't know what to do, honey boy. Because I'll just be sitting here in the house and I'll hear something moving around in the workshop. Really? I mean, it's detached from the house. Yeah, but I mean, I can still, I'm not an idiot, right? Sound still carries more than 10 feet. It's not that far away. I can hear stuff moving around in the workshop. Sometimes it sounds like he's in there working with stuff, using the equipment. And George goes, what would be your first guess, right? Maybe your dad's ghost is back. Could also be a burglar. There's a lot of expensive equipment in the workshop. George goes, Mom, let me go check. He said, I went to the workshop, I opened the door. The place was untouched. It was exactly like it was when he was there last, when his father was still alive. Nothing out of place. So he tells his mom, he goes, I don't know what could be causing that noise, but everything's there. George continued to visit his mom, and every so often she would say the same thing. Hey, Georgie boy, I think I'm hearing noises in the workshop. And he would go and check, and there would be nothing out of place. None of the machinery looked like it had been operated. Nothing really appeared to have been moved. And he would go and he'd tell his mom, hey, everything's fine in there. It's not like someone's rooting around in the place. Again, at this point, you may think it's paranormal, but in the back of your mind, you'd also be thinking, my mom might. I mean, obviously she's grieving, but she might be hallucinating at this point. Because you haven't heard anything. You don't stay the night there. You're not there a lot, but you've never heard anything. Everything seems to be in place. Doesn't seem like someone's broken in. So it's one of two things. Either your dad's ghost is in the workshop, which again, you've seen no evidence of that, or your mother is losing her mind. Well, one night, Betty asks her son, hey, I have a friend in hospice. I have a friend who's dying. Great, fun story. It's a fun story indeed. Even your friends are dying in this one. Hey, Georgie boy, one of my friends is dying, and I'm going to go visit them in hospice. Would you mind staying here at the house and keeping an eye on my pets? George is, oh, of course. Yeah, no, totally. I love your pets. And they have a dog. We'll go ahead and call him Rufus. They didn't give his real name. But yeah, no, I'll take care of old Rufus and all these other pets that you have. Fish, frogs, whatever, a couple cats. I'll watch them. Mom, you go hang out with your dying friend. I'll take care of this. Thank you, buddy. So, this is the first night in a long time where George is the only person in the house. He goes, I was sitting in the house. It was probably about 11 p.m. when all of a sudden Rufus starts freaking out. Hey, Rufus, what's going on? He's just freaking out. And this is all happening in the kitchen. George is like, yo, dude, chill. I'm balancing plates right now. I'm balancing Mom's fine china. Now's the time you yell at me? Rufus is running around freaking out. Then Rufus runs out of the kitchen and George follows him out of the kitchen. And that's when George hears the unmistakable sound of a lathe. Now, I don't know what a lathe sounds like. I couldn't even venture a guess. I don't even really know what it does. I think it's some sort of sanding machine. Something that spins stuff around, and when it's done, the thing is smaller than it used to be. I think that's what it is, right? Well, whatever. He hears that sound. He hears a noise, and he goes, that sound could mean one thing and one thing only. Lathe. And not any lathe, right? Not any lathe. The lathe his father used to use in the workshop. He hears it being operated for the first time since his father died. Or since his father even went to the hospital. So he walks out of the house, walks to the workshop, opens the door, and turns on the light. When George turns on the light of the workshop, he sees his father there. His father is indeed haunting the workshop. He sees his own father's ghost. But this is not the ghost of a strong man. This is not the ghost of a man who prided himself in physical fitness his entire life. No. It's not even the ghost of a man who slowly and painfully died in a hospital bed while wearing a diaper. What he sees is even more heartbreaking. He sees his father laying down on the cold floor of the workshop, laying face down. The ghost of his father is laying on the ground and is struggling to crawl across the floor. Not towards George, but away. Like a slowly scurrying rodent, blinded by light. He's crawling away from George, his useless legs dragging behind him. He watches his father slowly crawl across the floor and then stop, turn his head, and look back, staring right into George's eyes. And then slowly turns his head once again, facing away from his son, as he continued to crawl away. Crawl away from the boy who loved him. Are you trying to earn an award for most depressing episode? And he had a diaper on. He didn't notice that at first. George goes, no, he has a diaper on well. So anyways, yeah, that's pretty creepy, right? It's pretty heartbreaking and creepy. George shuts the door to the workshop and he goes, okay, there's a couple things that are going to happen from here on out. First off, I'm never checking the workshop again after dark. Secondly, I'm never going to tell my mom what I saw. And he didn't. He didn't ever tell his mom. And he goes, to this day, every so often, his mom will still hear noises come from the workshop. I wanted to cover this story for a couple reasons. First off, it's really creepy. You know I love a good creepy ghost story. It's sad. That's not one of the reasons I wanted to cover it. I don't try to find stuff that'll disturb you. Well, that's not true. I'll find gross stuff to disturb you, but not like sad stuff. What's interesting, okay, so this is why I wanted to cover this. We talk about this, and we talked about it fairly recently on the show, a couple episodes ago, maybe last week. There really does seem to be a thing behind how you see yourself and how your ghost appears. Sometimes, though, your death can be so shocking or so traumatic that you can't see past the death. There is no reason why Rick should not be a ghost who stands up, a ghost who appears to be physically fit, a ghost who can walk. There is absolutely no reason why that would be possible, except if he continued to see himself as someone who could not walk. We talked about this in the episode about would a deaf person leave behind a deaf ghost. That was when we'd read it. That's when we talked about it, and I've talked about it over the years. There is no reason why, in what we know about ghosts, that he would not be able to walk. And this is the interesting thing. Sometimes we do have ghosts of people who have limbs missing, and they were born with one arm. And you go, well, wouldn't that arm have shown up as a soul, as a part of a spirit? Yes, if he saw himself as someone as having two arms. Because sometimes there are people who get blown to bits on a battlefield and their ghost comes back totally normal. And then there are people who get blown apart in the battlefield and their ghost shows up covered in bloody rags. Or they're just a disembodied head. And they never got over the trauma of their death. They should be able to appear perfectly normal. He should be able to walk. But his mind state is keeping him in a mode where, no, my legs are useless. I'm crawling across the floor of my workshop. It's also really interesting that he acknowledges his son, but then turns away. That implies that this is not a residual spirit. That's a fairly common ghost. That's what you normally hear about in haunted houses. It's a ghost that's just repeating something they did throughout life. Playing a ghost piano, for example. Footsteps leading up the staircase. You hear them every so often. That's not an actual spirit left behind. That's a recording, a psychic recording left behind. But the fact that it actually turned and looked at his son and turned back, that would imply that this is actually the soul of the father. Why is he stuck with no legs in his workshop? He could be in his workshop because that was a place that he loved so much. That was a place where he found solitude and enjoyment. Him haunting the workshop, that's not the unusual part. The unusual part is that he still can't walk. And in a way, it's almost more, I don't want to use the term pathetic because, you might be in a hospital bed right now wearing a diaper. You're all, oh man, I just thought Jason was going to cheer me up. That first suicide story had me laughing. But this one makes fun of me. Now, I'm not saying you're pathetic if you have to wear a diaper and you're in a hospital bed. But what I'm saying is that's not ideal. Nobody wants to do that. I mean, we did cover that guy who had that poop fetish. You might be down for that. But most people don't want to be stuck in a hospital bed wearing a diaper. But if you had a choice, someone goes, you got to spend the next year in a hospital bed wearing a diaper with unlimited morphine. You're like, oh, sign me up for that one. Or you have to spend a year crawling across the floor of a workshop. And you're like, do I get to use the tools? Can I make myself a little skateboard? Put my tummy on it and roll around? No. You just have to crawl around face down on the workshop floor. What's worse? I mean, that's the easiest answer, right? Obviously, you get to eat in the hospital room, you get to watch television, morphine, you get all the morphine you want. So it's even worse than if his ghost was just wearing a diaper in a hospital. Way worse. It's like 100 times, it's almost incalculably bad. And the dad's stuck in this workshop. He doesn't specifically say in the narrative, but I don't think George really believes in ghosts. I really don't think that because even when his mom was saying, I keep hearing things happening in the garage, someone who does believe in ghosts will often say, well, maybe that's dad. Maybe that's dad in there. But George doesn't really, it's kind of like, my mom said this stuff and I'd go check and there'd be nothing wrong. This would be a prime place to I don't care what religion you are. It doesn't matter if you're even an agnostic or an atheist. Something like this, if you encountered something like this with your own father crawling across the floor, you call up a local spiritual leader, rabbi, minister, imam, priest, whatever, Buddhist monk, and say, hey, I think you might need to do an exorcism. Or, at the very least, tell my dad he can walk. It's almost, I don't want to say cruel, but it is, imagine if you knew that your dad's soul was crawling around on the floor. You're like, well, dad did ground me that one time because I didn't eat my green beans. You deserve it, Pops. No, I think the humane action would be to contact someone who could at least convince that spirit. At the very least, he can walk. He'd be like, we don't have to get rid of him. We can still have a haunted workshop. He can still make stuff. But at least, at the very least, make it so, he doesn't have to roll. He doesn't have to crawl around on the floor. At the most, help his soul transfer over. That's the least you could do, I think. But I found the story very interesting because we just recently talked about how you see your soul may be how you appear as a ghost. It does appear that is a factor. And then I came across this story over the weekend, and I was like, wow, this is a perfect example of that. It's very sad too, right? It's not like he spent his entire life crawling around on the floor. He lived his entire life healthy and fit, and then had a bad year. And now his soul is trapped as a crawling phantom. So just in that period of time, the internal vision of who he saw himself shifted. I mean, the guy did have esophageal cancer. I'm not saying he should have been a little more optimistic. Oh, buck up, man. Your legs will work in the afterlife. I kind of understand what it is, but that's very creepy to all of us. We may have this idea of what our ghost is going to be, what we're going to feel like, and then the last 3 months or last 3 hours of your life is so horrific that you're like, oh man, I'm the shotgun blast ghost. You say as your face is just peeled away. You look like just some monster. You have a skull face and there's just like flesh kind of like sticking off on all sides. You're like, what? This is it? I thought it was going to be a cute ghost. Oh, I was totally going to date that girl from The Ring. Look at me. I'm a monster. That would suck, right? You think, well, I might want to die pretty then. No shotguns for me. But that, you're in a horrible car accident and your arms get ripped off and your legs get ripped off and then your torso rolls around on them and they're reattached the wrong way. You're like, well, is that even possible? You crashed into a super glue factory, okay? You're just rolling around for a while and eventually your arms are your legs and your legs are your arms. And now you're a ghost and you're like, that'd actually be kind of badass now that I think about it. The girl from The Ring will totally dig this, I say as I'm scaring school children running down hallways. No, I mean, you can have a vision of who you are, and then in the last year, it completely changes, and then you're stuck as a crawling spirit, and your son doesn't even, call it a Ghostbuster. At the very least, you could shoot me and put me in a box. Don't make me crawl around on the floor forever. It's creepy, too, to think, if this soul doesn't get any peace. Imagine they sell the house. Because remember, he didn't tell his mom that he saw, which is a good idea. I understand. I'm always about more transparency, no pun intended, when it comes to ghosts. But, I probably wouldn't tell my mom either. But eventually, they're probably going to sell the house. And then someone else is going to move in and go, wow, a detached workshop? And they turn on the light and there's a dude crawling. There's a dude crawling on the floor. And I'm in the corner with mixed up limbs going, ah! I had nothing to do with it. I just figured it'd be extra spooky if I was hiding in the dark, jumping out at you. Crazy stuff. A tragic story. A completely avoidable story. Had that first doctor done a few more tests, might have been able to save Rick's life. Instead, Rick is damned to a future of crawling on the floor. He's dead. That's not even the worst part. He died slowly of cancer. You keep saying, oh no, he's on the floor. He's on the floor. Yeah, that's bad. But, the whole cancer thing, dying in your family, all that stuff's bad too. Yeah, I know, but I don't like laying down on the floor. If I gotta be honest, I don't like it at all. I know I sleep on the floor when there's a cat around. That's a long story, but, I don't like getting on the floor, and I don't like getting up. I do not squats, when I do crunches, I do them in my bed. You're like, Jason, that's just you trying to get out of bed. It takes me 30 times. Oh, finally, I roll out of bed. No, if someone says, hey, lay on the ground and do crunches, I'll be like, absolutely not. But I will do them on your couch. They're like messing up your couch. My cushions. Oh, I'm rolling them out of the way. No, I'll do crunches in my bed, and I won't get on the ground. I don't get on the ground for nothing. So to me, that would be a really bad punishment. Is walking around on the ground, face down on the ground. So to me, this story was extra scary. I was like, as I'm telling it, I was like, oh no, I'm about to get to the part where he's on the ground. Will I be brave enough to tell it? And luckily, I was. DeadRabbitRadio@gmail.com is going to be our email address. You can also hit us up at Facebook.com/DeadRabbitRadio. TikTok is @DeadRabbitRadio. Dead Rabbit Radio is the daily paranormal, conspiracy, and true crime podcast. You don't have to listen to it every day, but I'm so glad you listened to it today. Have a great weekend, guys.